Hi, everyone. I was a fourth generation family farmer, and I'm a first generation climate warrior. I read an article a little while back with an opening line that said, agriculture, both a cause and a casualty of climate change. This might cause you to think, how is it that both a problem and a solution can exist in the same system? Today, we're going to consider transformative, systems-based approaches to two main issues facing modern agriculture that can simultaneously act as catalysts for climate adaptation. Agricultural production, farmland preservation, and energy production can all coexist simultaneously in the world we want to build. First, agriculture is a multi-trillion-dollar global industry that both directly and indirectly consumes energy. In the United States, the United States Department of Agriculture reports that in 2014, agriculture accounted for 2% of total U.S. energy consumption. Agriculture is also an energy producer through the growth of plants and animals and through processes such as conversion of waste. In the 2014 survey by the USDA as well, it was noted that just 6% of farms participate in energy production processes, and $56,000 is the annual expected revenue generation and payments from these processes. Energy is a primary concern on farms as it is a huge cost to small and medium-sized farmers. The primary size of farmers we have here in New York State, it's where they spend the greatest amount. The second problem is the issue of farmland preservation. The decrease in available land is a burden to agricultural opportunity, an issue that's been ongoing in our country for decades. If you look at the map at New York State, the key areas of our urban areas in New York State along Buffalo, Syracuse, Rochester, towards Albany, and down towards the Hudson River Valley face the greatest pressures from development. There have been years of strategizing to combat this issue, but still available farmland decreases because of external pressures. Our agriculture communities face multifaceted issues and extreme hardship, and we need systems-based approaches that transform these problems into solutions. Sure, you could argue that the idea of the agricultural community is shifting as our world urbanizes, but we will all forever need food. Food that requires quality land and soil to be grown and produced on, and people to care for that production. Family farmers, such as the kids shown here, are stewards of our world's most precious resources, and my focus has been on finding climate-friendly solutions that build vitality for their future. New York State's focus has been on reforming the energy vision, or REV for short. The REV initiative is a prospectus for New York State's energy future. REV has some very concrete goals it wants to achieve as a state to reduce our footprint, but there remains a need for industry-specific action. This is one way to do that. We can leverage our farmers, the people who know how to craft and to create from the world's resources. We can be efficient with those resources in ways that ensure future usability and economic scalability. In Michigan, new groundbreaking partnerships are evaluating the effects of solar and wind energy systems on farms for farmer land tenure, farm succession planning, meaning who's going to take over the farm when the next generation comes along, and models for revenue generation and sharing in communities. Here in New York State, our Energy Research Development Authority, or NYSERDA, as we've talked about today, is assisting with renewable energy infrastructure systems on not prime farmland or those areas where agriculture is not viable to guarantee that conservation of land is a key proponent of our local policies. We want to put renewables where they make sense and have the greatest impact on our communities. Facilitating connections between revenue streams, land development, can excel the New York State REV initiatives and continue to support a thriving agricultural industry that protects the amount and use of our resources. We have a great asset in our farmers, and they know how to care for the land, they steward the land, and they ultimately understand the inherent value of the land. I take inspiration from my grandfather, who I'm sure said this more than once in his 60-plus year tenure as a farmer. I own the cows, so I can afford the land. A true love of land management that earned him Conservation Farmer of the Year by the Western New York District more than once in his farming tenure. New York State's agricultural communities must be a central focus in the decision-making for our energy future, because not only are these communities stewards of the resources for the world that we have, that we require, and that we value, but there's a growing need for more conscious generation and use of these resources overall. Agriculture fosters community and innovative thinking, and it can be a platform for individuals of multiple backgrounds to engage in collective practice, which is something that is embodied within the REV legislation. A mentor once said to me, if we can be on the upside of a down situation, why not take the opportunity? No one wants to find themselves with a decreasing share in a market that is ever more necessary. I urge you all to consider renewable energy as our opportunity and farmland as our market. Active preservation through innovative action can increase vitality in our ever necessary agricultural communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelley. Wait, hold on. Yeah, we got some questions.
You've got plenty of questions for me, I'm sure.
Kelley, thank you. I have a question about a way, sort of a concrete idea you might have about moving this work forward in the region. What would be sort of a short-term activity of other policymakers or NGOs or government to move this work forward that you're proposing?
So because of my planning related background, I'm going to give you a policy answer to that question. And it's not necessarily short term, but it could be short or long term. So because we have the REV legislation in New York State, that's a state level policy saying renewable energy and a prospectus for our energy future is important at a state level. And very few local governments have something similar that supports the REV initiative or reinforces the REV initiative at a local government level. So looking at ways that we can incorporate agriculture into our policy making related to renewable energy and our energy future at a local government level is really key. And one way to do that would be for a local government or even New York State to say, to write agriculture right into the legislation and to say that any land that is viable for farming or has conservation value could be put under a permanent conservation easement held by the local government legislative body, and at least 80% of that land has to be viable for farmland or conservation use, and the remaining 20% could be used or should be used for a renewable energy infrastructure project, with the idea being that once that energy project, the infrastructure outlives its potential 10 or 20-year life, and we get to a point in our community where we are in need of more locally grown food or agricultural products, that land has less of a conversion value back to usable farmland.
Quick follow-up, Kelley. How do you see that interplaying with the general sort of deference to municipal governance over land use?
Can you be a little bit more specific? Like municipal government not wanting to touch land use to a certain degree?
If I understood your idea correctly, it was to sort of have some statewide framework for the utilization and conservation of land that combine renewables and agriculture. And I guess I'm questioning how do you see that sort of playing out with the general deference at the state level to have municipal governments control land use?
Sure. So I think it actually could be an opportunity for the local government level to step up and say, the state is telling us it's up to us to make a decision about how we're going to use our land and what we're going to set aside land for. And local governments could then act collectively or act individually as champions for legislation to put legislation such as this in place and then act as models for other parts of the country. I do know from work with a few of my mentors I've had that there is legislation in play similar to this in other areas of the country at the state level, but that works because their state level government is kind of the be-all, end-all governing body, and the deference is towards state government, not local governments.